I'm Rick Harp. This is your APTN News Brief for Wednesday, March 27th. We lead off in Ottawa, where the Minister of Indigenous Services has been asked to intervene in a band council situation 5 former chiefs claim is dysfunctional. Fraser Needham explains.
It's been over 3 years now. We tried to work things out in our community.
One of the former chiefs at Tuesday's press conference was James Papatee of the Kitcisakik First Nation.
Before going to public, we had a lot of meeting with those people, tried to bring them back on the right track, but it didn't happen. They kept controlling, they kept doing what I call the abusing power over the general manager and also over the women of the community. And us, we had enough.
The group is alleging there have been financial improprieties, conflict of interest, and harassment of band members. Kitcisakik is a small community of about 400 people located roughly 130 kilometers south of Val-d'Or. Some community residents currently don't have access to either electricity or running water. And Papatee says the chaos is hampering efforts to bring both hydro and water into the community.
They don't even consider our planning for a new village, and that's a kind of control of the information that they're exercising right now, and it's very difficult to answer our community when they ask for when the community's project is going to move on, when the power is going to be there, when the water is going to be available for our community.
In an emailed statement, the Kitcisakik Band Council said it was aware of the press conference but would not be commenting at this time. APTN reached out to Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Hajdu's office for comment, but did not hear back by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
To Iqaluit, where a building housing several local businesses was completely destroyed in a fire Tuesday, among them longtime media outlet Kitcisakik News. Other occupants include an Inuit-owned advertising and communication agency, as well as IUT, a language authority created by the Nunavut Legislative Assembly. And according to the Kitcisakik newspaper, the blaze began around 8 a.m., intensifying by noon, necessitating parts of the street to be blocked off to traffic. All but extinguished as of yesterday afternoon, the cause of the fire remains unknown. The Mohawk Council of Kahnawake has denounced the governments of Quebec and Canada over what they claim is a failure to consult regarding a multi-billion-dollar EV battery plant, the construction of which will pave over important wetlands. Maricela Amador has more.
My biggest right is my responsibility. My custodial responsibility to the environment.
Last week, during a press conference in Montreal, the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, along with several environmental groups, accused Quebec of prioritizing profit over protecting the environment. The groups claimed the government has been less than transparent and questioned their handling of the Northvolt electric vehicle battery plant project.
Right now, what we're deeply concerned about is the fact that neither Quebec, the Quebec government, nor the federal government reached out to us in terms of any kind of meaningful consultation on the project.
The $7 billion project was announced in September and will produce electric car batteries. The work on the future factory is in Montreal's South Shore. Construction began in January after receiving authorization by the Provincial Environment Department.
At that site are endangered species, 142 bird species, including 14 at risk.
But Chief Montour said that the Mohawk Council has only had one meeting with the province regarding the future battery plant.
They attempted to have one consultation with us where they said they didn't have a duty to consult. Okay. And I'm sorry, but I said, I'm not sorry. You guys you're behaving like pimps.
The federal government and the province will invest $2.7 billion for the construction of the factory. It is expected to be built by the end of 2026.
We're not here today to oppose the project. It's to ask the government to stop playing games with environmental regulations and with public consultation mechanisms as it sees fit.
Marc-André Viau, the Director of Governmental Relations with the environmental group Équiterre, said the lack of transparency by Quebec has eroded the public's trust in the project.
What the government has done is to create a regulation so that the company is not subject to the public consultation mechanism of the Environmental Public Hearing Office, so the company doesn't have to present all the documents publicly.
Donc, à ce moment-là, la compagnie n'a pas à présenter tous les documents de façon publique.
Although the Environmental Public Hearing Office is not a decision-making body, it requires public consultation on the impacts of any projects that affect the environment and issues recommendations. But for Northvolt, they streamlined the process.
La mentalité derrière
The idea behind the government's vision is, really, to create a specific regulatory framework for the company. And that's problematic, because nobody knows what to expect.
c'est problématique parce que personne ne sait à quoi s'attendre.
Northvolt did not respond to a request for comment. In late January, a Quebec Superior Court judge rejected an injunction request to stop the work by the Quebec Environmental Law Centre. The Mohawk Council of Kahnawake filed a lawsuit with Quebec Superior Court to demand orders requiring both levels of government to engage in consultation.
Right now, there's a mediator that's been appointed, who's formerly functioned as a lawyer, who's now a judge. We'll be looking at and discussing the merits of our motion there in a case management way, and then we'll see down the road whether or not there's further action to take.
Quebec's Environment Ministry was unable to speak to APTN News before the deadline. Maricela Amador, APTN National News, Montreal.
And finally, the Caldwell First Nation and Parks Canada have agreed to co-govern a proposed national urban park. With more on the area that could be coming to the west end of Windsor, Ontario, CTV's Sanjay Maru.
It's Canada's southernmost point, Point Pelee National Park, but this land serves as a cornerstone of a painful past for Indigenous people.
Caldwell First Nation inhabited this park. We were burned out, our homes were burned out, and we were asked to leave. And we did.
That was around the 1800s. Now in 2024, Caldwell First Nation is standing side by side with the federal government, signing a memorandum of understanding to explore shared governance of Windsor's proposed National Urban Park.
We're both interested in exploring different options for the proposed urban park in Windsor, alongside other First Nations that may become involved and our partners in the Windsor area.
The memorandum commits the federal government to explore opportunities for things like First Nations-led conservation, park operations, and wildlife management. It is not a legally binding contract, but Caldwell First Nation Chief Mary Duckworth says she has no concern about the distinction in the language.
I don't have any worries about that at all. We spent 2 years talking about what it could look like and what needs to happen on both sides. So I'm not even worried.
All parks that are being established new, and there are many, as you know, we have a broad 30 by 30 agenda to create 10 new national parks, 10 new marine conservation areas, and 15 urban parks by 2030. And as we work forward on all of those, we're working in collaboration with First Nations and Indigenous partners across the country.
Officials say there is no clear timeline on when the proposed National Urban Park will be designated, as Parks Canada continues to work toward establishing boundaries and agreements with lower levels of government.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Wednesday, March 27th. I'm Rick Harp.